Hi, everyone. Ronald Ingram here, your rebel banker futurist, broadcasting live on X, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and more right now. From the Nevada high desert, looking down on the Luxor Pyramid. So really big week, and it's been a while since we've chatted, so thanks for joining. Hopefully we have the European audience and the other hemisphere of the world joining today. So I wanted to talk about some big events that have happened and breakthroughs, and we'll start out with the event that I just completed last night, the showcase at the International Business Center in Las Vegas. Very well attended event, despite a hockey championship going on that were many people that were able to attend the game would be in attendance and were watching. And it was we weren't sure what the turnout would be like, but it was great. So, and great job to Nevada startup and the whole team there and the crew there for setting up a really engaging event. And it was from the setup to well past the closing time. The interest and the buzz around BROK, the Bankers Revolutionary Operations Keiretsu, was intense. And it was great, though. One of the longest conversations I had was with the Commissioner of Economic Development for the city. And it's important to have some context here about the city. Here's what BROK looked like on the big screen, and it was very, very successful. I will do a demo, not today, a full demo, but I will do a demo very soon here of the working, fully live BROK. I'll talk a little about the capabilities were exceeded my expectations. So my own voice was cloned. So BROK is speaking in my voice, and perfect mastery of the Ingram evaluation matrix, explaining what that is, how it works, ingesting a loan application live, generating the output and speaking the recommendation, and followed by the rationale in detail or in summary, whichever the banker or the user prefers, and generating a really high quality output report as well. So the text in the box is dense, but it's spoken, so that makes it, and you can ask for a summary, so it makes it very simple. Or it can be a simple, produce a simple 2-page report, fully explainable, recommendation, yes or no, with conditions or not, and really is very impressive. So good job, BROK. Everyone was impressed. So in particular, so it's always fantastic to have interaction with the community, with potential users and with stockholders or future stockholders. You always learn so much, and this was the first time that publicly, interactively, I with BROK there interacting with public, I was able to get some real tangible feedback, and there's nothing kind of beats being able to read the body language and the facial expressions and everything as you're talking to people about it, and seeing their reactions. And a couple of key takeaways: a lot of interest in the notion of the ZPE, the zero-person enterprise. And I was actually a little bit concerned about that, because normally one of the metrics that with city and government and officials in attendance and invited, and a really good turnout from the city in particular. And the couldn't have a, it was perfect to connect with the Commissioner of Economic Development. Long conversation with him and some others, and Kathleen Taylor, and was a fantastic conversation with her, and oh, so many others. I shouldn't have started mentioning names. No, so I apologize if for all the people that I'm not going to mention today, but just really great to see the support from Vegas and beyond. But let's, I don't really think I've given enough attention to Vegas. We had the Vegas Ladies event, which is very successful. One of our more successful things, is just very impromptu, but I learned a lot from that, and I'm still learning from that. But Vegas, just to give you some context, this is it's over 2 million people that are permanent residents, but you have to keep in mind is that 30 million people come through this city every year, and they fall into generally two categories: adult tourists and senior executives. Almost the senior executives of every major company in the world are here. Almost in Vegas, you can almost be guaranteed they're going to be here twice a year for conferences. So this city packs the punch, and that's just based on the gaming, really, the entertainment industry. It's known as the entertainment capital of the world. So that brings a lot of people, and that brings a lot of conferences. It's arguably, I think, it's a huge nexus for business conversation in every industry. And talking to the commissioner, he is fascinated by the Ingram evaluation matrix as well, because of its applicability to city decisions, to government decisions, and as a tool for business decision makers, who millions of them engage with Vegas at conferences, and many of those conferences are bank related and fintech related and crypto related, so and tech related, and consumer electronics, the biggest consumer electronics show in the world. We all know by now, I think, that the Ingram evaluation matrix is key tool, very, very useful for high stakes decisions in any vertical. We're focusing on banking because that's the low hanging fruit, as I have a well established track record in as an innovator is the polite way of saying it, but another way of saying it is a rebel banker and disruptor. But I've known, if you're bankers that want to know what's coming next, what the new opportunities are, and the new threats, they know that I'll be able to help them. So, and not just bankers, but the big consulting firms. I haven't mentioned, I don't think if you read my bio, you know that I've been a consultant for Gerson Lerman Group for over 20 years, and still am. Just yesterday had a call with one of the big five. I'm not allowed to name names in confidentiality, but one of the big five consulting firms in the world, one of the major consulting firms. The consulting firms like Bain, McKinsey, PwC, others. There are and a Boston Consulting Group. Anyway, there are many. Not very many, a handful of very, very influential consulting firms that advise governments, that advise the Fortune 500, that advise the largest banks in the world, that advise on IPOs, mergers and acquisitions, course, huge event that I should mention. I don't have it in my agenda today, but I've been saying a lot about the SpaceX IPO. So I won't get into much. Just want to stay focused on SPOCK here and BROK, but there's a direct intersection with the Interstellar Bank, which needs a platform, which now you all see how we were thinking ahead. And literally, I wrote the first article on the concept of compute in space in December 7th, and the exact format that SpaceX is using with solar on the hot side and compute on the cold side. And a lot of people get this wrong. You don't, like critics that don't see, and this model of data centers, if you will, it's not really like it, but compute in space where the energy is right at the source of the energy, so there's no transmission of electricity. Many people have so many things wrong, and Kathy Woods from the famous investment firm VC ARK Investments, who is an early investor in Tesla and in AI, and she has a great track record as one of the leading thinkers and investors in revolutionary. That's what she's looking for: revolutionary, disruptive investment that can scale big time. And so she's the one that she's right now forecasting over $1 million for Bitcoin. She's an early investor in Bitcoin as well, and crypto currencies, and Coinbase and MicroStrategy, Michael Saylor famously. So she even said, now this is a key point, that the petawatt, and what is a petawatt? A petawatt is a measure of energy output, and it is equivalent to more than the entire electrical usage of the entire nation of America. So let that sink in. So people need to get there. So when you think of it in this context, Musk has already created the rails into space with SpaceX. So that's like the first railway. Peter Diamandis used this analogy. He said, "Don't think of you could value a railway company based on the number of passengers that they transport and what the revenue of their tickets are, right? But for those first railroads, that would have been very short-sighted, because the railroads are what opened up the whole west of the United States, which is now, California is one of the biggest economies in the world. That state alone is bigger than most nations. And so that was precipitated and enabled by the first railway companies. So that is kind of, you need to think of SpaceX in those kinds of terms. And on top of it, so it's providing rails into space, and it's providing the most valuable payload you could think of. So it'd be like having a railway company that is also the first electrical company that is going to wire up provide the electrical infrastructure for the West, because the new infrastructure, it is literally electrical, and it is also AI compute. So SpaceX is already providing compute for the other, for not only Grok, but for all the other other major AI models that have great demand but aren't able to keep up with the electrical supply. So Musk is building the infrastructure of infrastructure. So this is like an infrastructure company. So, and Kathy Woods and ARK Invest, they never even factored in they say this, that Musk didn't even announce the idea of compute in space and terafab, the chips that will be used in space, and they've solved all the engineering problems. Okay, so the math has been done, and nobody understands. So I get a kick out of these critics, experts who are saying, "Oh well, there's this issue and that issue, and the cost of moving mass into space is too inexpensive." Well, the glass on the solar panels is thinner. I know this subject in a great deal of depth. Because I actually wrote an article about it December 7th, describing exactly what SpaceX, what I would do if I owned SpaceX, basically. And that's the model that they're following. And economics, the math is sound. So it's competitive almost from day one, from when they light up those first computing centers in space, solar powered compute in space. When they start to light those up in about 30 months or so, they're profitable from the beginning. And also people say, oh, well, SpaceX doesn't have enough revenue. SpaceX has lost money. All of these arguments are moot. And Starlink, they forget Starlink is generating massive revenue. It is a global solution for telecom. So that's another huge aspect of infrastructure. So this is like an infrastructure for the singularity economy. So this is really, really big. And so don't go out and spend all your money on SpaceX though. Maybe one share or something like that, but not even. Just actually, I bought a share, and then I said, what am I doing? I sold the share, because even if it goes 10x, 100x, it's not going to go this year. It's not going to go 1,000x, right? And there's only one place where I know that is theoretically even possible, based on my knowledge and bias. And you know what I'm going to say, that what I think the ticket is, right? So, but this is not investment advice. This is investment activism as well. So I invest in what you believe in and what you want to see in the future and what you want to see successful, and get out of the paradigm of trying to predict using old thinking and traditional frameworks to value. And that's kind of the point that I'm making about this SpaceX conversation, is nobody has the framework, not even the most innovative, huge investment enterprises on the planet have the foresight. And I know this because the top consulting firms that advise the banks, I advise them. Okay. So I know what I'm talking about, and they don't have the frameworks. So there are new patterns at play. And so if you want to get ahead of the pattern, then I don't know if it would have been the case in the future or in the past, but at this present moment in the singularity, it makes sense to have a founder, I don't know how any futurist can just be a theoretical futurist anymore, because if you have the intellect to be a futurist, you can build things. Very soon you will. So maybe every futurist on the planet will soon be a business owner because of BROK. So this is all connecting back to my conversation with the commissioner of the Economic Development Commission for the city, because I just was straight up. I said, this is going to create, what we're building here is going to create massive prosperity for the cities that embrace it, that embrace this, and let's work together and collaborate on what that means to embrace and assist. And so there's several possibilities. There's using the tools themselves, which would be impactful and a great start. There is making these tools available to all of the entrepreneurs or would-be entrepreneurs. And this is where the conversation gets really interesting, because with the ZPE, BROK he goes beyond your banker. He's a banker that can do things. a banker that could be also. And it's interesting, actually. I was started it before I became a serial entrepreneur. I started in banking, and one of my clients, a tech guy, an engineer in consumer electronics and PCs, he recruited me. I was his banker. He recruited me to be the president of the company, which after several pivots, eventually and mergers and acquisitions, eventually became the online core for digital transactions, digital commerce, the old kind with credit cards and debit cards, for the world through Worldline. Hundreds of billions of dollars transact through Worldline, and that the business model, the plan, all of that was built by me. And so, in a way, I'm kind of like a prototype of an evolution of BROK, right? But compressed into BROK is all the learning that I have compressed into his now moment, right? So all of that knowledge and information, and sort of, I'm kind of like living proof that a banker that really understands banking is those skills are too valuable to be sort of locked in a bank serving. No, I don't want to. That's fine for bankers to use their skills to serve their community. Everybody has their own genius, right? No one should follow anybody else. You should find your own genius within you, and everybody has a genius. So my genius, in the generic sense, is being able to recognize patterns and with foresight. And what I recognized back then was that merchants, all of my existing customer base, needed to be able to transact online, and they couldn't even accept a credit card very effectively. Or there were ways to do it, but it wasn't that early. But the ways to do it, they were so poor, so difficult to access. Specifically, there are only like 2 or 3 companies that a large merchant, a large business could contact, say, hey, I want to get merchant accounts set up so that I can accept Visa and MasterCard online to sell my computers. That's literally the use case that I'm talking about is a real one. And months, over a year, to get engagement and to get anything set up, right? And it was frustrating for me because I want to please. I was, as a young banker at the time, probably the youngest. Therefore, I was the tech guy. As none of the other bankers understood technology at all. And that's still, many of those bankers are still there and still don't understand technology. But I was from the beginning, the tech banker. And so anything to do with tech, or any company that needed any kind of tech, from international money transfer, wire transfer systems, to ATMs, to merchant processing applications, to accept payments, that all came to me or through me. And it was painful because we couldn't meet the demand. There were these large companies, they didn't want to talk to any company that had less than a few thousand employees and tens of millions of transactions, transaction potential within the first 12 months. So if you're small, I would just say, sorry, there's no solution for you right now. I think PayPal was just getting started and not even accepting, not even available in all markets, and there were limitations, a great number of limitations, and there still are. But so that's where I'm sort of coming from, and so I recognized this pattern, this opportunity, and so eventually created a gateway, which became, so I left the bank, and that bank, TD Bank, became my biggest customer. And because I knew all the people there and I knew what they were solving, I said, hey, I left to solve this problem for you. And they cheered me on. They were sorry to see me go, but they said, Ron, you have to do this. The bank needs this, business community needs this. This makes sense. So probably the most amicable exit that you ever heard of, and a great great experience. You know, exiting is often hard, and I've had some hard exits too. But that was a very wonderful experience, and that's the way any young entrepreneurs out there. That's what I encourage you to never burn bridges, you know, and always to, unless they need to be burned, but if and there's no other way. But generally, and also always have before you leave a job, always have another job or opportunity in mind. That's kind of my mindset, which has worked out pretty well for me. But anyway, back to, so I became this prototype of a banker that could, with foresight, that could see the opportunity. And so it only made sense that for me to solve that solution by becoming an entrepreneur, which is a very unusual path for a banker, but that's my genius. So in the generic, humble sense of the word. And so now imagine so just like my client hired me to lead his company, to be president of his company and raise the money and build the business plan. And because I was advising him on his business plan and financing and all of these things as he was growing, I knew his business. This is exactly the model for BROK. BROK will listen to you, learn your business. And BROK also goes far beyond what I was capable of when I was a 20-year-old banker. In terms of legal knowledge, I had my securities licenses. Before I went into banking, I did Merrill Lynch before I went into traditional commercial and retail banking. I was on the investment side, like as a financial advisor at Merrill Lynch, and so that's where I got my securities licenses and that type of thing. But I did not know, I was not a lawyer, I was a banker. And you have to be skilled in accounting, and you get extensive training in big banks. I had basically got my accounting degree, if you will, with formal training at the Bankers Institute at BMO, a really beautiful facility set up to train their bankers worldwide. And so a biohack tip of the day. These are exogenous ketones, and I don't sell this, don't market it, but really great especially if you're metabolically adapted, as I am, for this is straight fuel that does not create any there's no sugar at all. It's not, it is filled with ketones, which are a more efficient fuel, especially for the brain. And so I didn't have time for breakfast this morning. And this is a good kick if you're metabolically adapted. And I'm not a doctor, so always advise. So this is not medical advice, okay? This is my personal experience and opinion in the biohacking front, which I haven't been talking much about. So I'm behind on the tips. Usually early on, I was getting one tip a day. So here's one tip. I'm going to give one other one today that ties into at the end, that links cognition and immediate return on investment. So stick around for that. But back to the commissioner. So I said, so I know that typically you're wondering, you're probably going to say, well, how many jobs is Ron going to create? How many jobs is BROK going to take? I said, and I didn't actually even ask that question. I sort of preempted it. I said, that is, you're going to measure, you look around and you say, how many jobs are this going to create? That's not the right framing. I said, we really need new KPIs. Governments, and it could start in Vegas, cities need a new KPI. They need to be more focused on the output. And I said, imagine if the entrepreneurs here, because there were other exhibitors there, and that was good too, actually. So it wasn't just the Neobanx show. There were other graduates from the program there as well, and I think 30. So, but all the action was at my was all around Neobanx. I literally had a queue of people lining up to talk to me the whole time I was there, and I felt a little bit sorry for some of the others that there's like, we were like the center of the and this was what I was told, because I was so focused on people that I didn't notice, but my wife was there with me, and she was taking pictures and talking to people as well to help, and others were helping, and so they said, like, they were the ones that told me that that what I was experiencing was not normal. So not just the city officials, but other businesses, the investors, everyone that was there was coming to talk to me, and it was impossible for me to talk to everybody. So I'll be having a lot of follow-up events and one-on-one meetings. Some are already scheduled from this. And so anyway, but I'd spent a lot of time with the commissioner, and because he had so many good questions, and very fruitful, productive, and engaging conversation I could tell. And I said, now think of all these people here, all of these entrepreneurs, every single one of them has the output of a 100-person company. Or if they already have 100 people, they have the output of a 10,000 person company. Imagine what that is going to do to the economy of this city. And then I said, that's why the second part of what I'm promoting, and I've put out a couple of articles on this, is what I call the VBZ, or the Vegas banking zone. And I actually backed off a little bit because I didn't get I guess I became impatient, as I'm more patient than a lot of the folks on that are crypto native, digital native investors. They expect everything done yesterday. So I'm more patient than that, but I forget how slow sometimes the government can move, and it takes time for especially new ideas. There's a blessing and a curse often with many things, right? So when they're new, fresh ideas, they're a little bit harder to grok. But if they're the right ideas, they all the data, all the noise, if you're in alignment with the future and the force of negentropy, which is the force of increasing complexity that naturally, innately creates beauty and order out of disorder. It's the opposite force to entropy, which is decay. The universe wouldn't exist if there were only entropy. We didn't start with a perfect utopia universe, and then that is moving into nothingness, or back into the Big Bang, right? From the Big Bang we're just using, I know that's not real, but using that as a familiar model, right? That where everything started with one point and where everything was connected. I do believe there's elements of the Big Bang theory which are believable, and so everything is connected and expands out from the center, but maintains its connection in the quantum field, or the morphogenetic field. Rupert Sheldrake, you really want to write that name down, Rupert Sheldrake. The morphogenetic field, deemed heretical actually by science. He's a very serious scientist, but his peers, when he wrote he gave a TEDx talk that was banned. It's just the idea is too powerful, and quantum and in terms of classical mechanics, it makes no sense, but it makes perfect sense from the perspective of Ingram quantum objectivism, and from which is a fleshed out model of quantum physics that I've developed. And but any model of quantum physics has what Einstein called spooky action at a distance, I think, or something like that. And where in quantum entanglement, where everything is connected to everything else. And it's kind of easy as if you imagine everything emerging from nothing, from the point after nothing being one thing, and then expanding into the appearance of many, many things, but still it's all one thing. And that is an ancient idea that is now being validated in quantum physics. And I explain it with math in Ingram Quantum Objectivism, but publishers and authors advise me not to include the math in the book. So I'll have to push out a wiki at some point, or some kind of where you can document. If you look through my work, you can see I've through a few snippets of equations and that explain the math behind Ingram Quantum Objectivism and how everything is connected. But so I think today, so Rupert Sheldrake, his work would be more accepted, but ironically, and this is one of the ways that I say, and Buckminster, the genius American inventor, Buckminster Fuller, used to say that never doubt the power of one person to change the world. And Margaret Mead said, never doubt the power of a small group of people to affect change. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has, right? And so when you consider the idea of morphogenic or morphic resonance, that we're all connected and everything is conscious, the substrate of the universe of matter is consciousness, then it's very easy to see how when that's yet another pretty powerful, almost magical way of explaining how one mechanism for an individual to affect change in the universe. And then if you take into account the morphogenetic field and morphic resonance of Rupert Sheldrake, then you get this idea of amplification and how 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 1,000 people all thinking along similar lines with even just temporarily aligned goals can have an impact on not just the community, but on what Jung would refer to as the collective unconscious, this other way that we're connected in psychological terms, where there's substrate where we're all connected. And maybe it's not a different thing. Maybe it's just different words for the same thing. So anyway, the power of what we attend to. So if you're listening to this, kudos. You're very, very early. And these ideas are early, and not all of them. In some ways, they're just the way that they're being expressed is a new way of expressing some ideas, some of which are quite ancient, but now being understood in a different language, a language of quantum physics. So, but in explainable in binary, even in binary logic, which I'm not in favor of. Quadrivalent logic is the way to go. But anyway, back to but this more esoteric stuff really matters, and so it's worth talking about and thinking about, obviously, right? Because thinking makes matter. It matters. So I said to this commissioner, we need to think about the output, right? Imagine all these people. Imagine every artist, or anybody that has a business idea, or even government. Well, we didn't talk about government employees. Probably they wouldn't want government employees to be thinking outside of the box for their, outside of their own jobs necessarily. Although I did encourage a lot of city officials and offered them, shared with them the Spock story, offered the Spock story and information on that. But I said, imagine if the impact that will have, and then that means we need banking, right? And so we need a new model of banking, all of which I've defined and is defined by neobanks. All the elements, from scoring, from risk assessment, from decision making, to the accounting side. A lot of, I've seen it with working with the entrepreneurs community in Vegas. A lot of people that are getting started with their first business, they don't know if they should do an LLC or a sole proprietorship or a C corp, or in what state they should register, whether it's Delaware or Nevada, or there's all of these types of things, and so they think that is business, but that's not business. That's just that's just the starting point of your business. This is just the infrastructure things to help you have a business, but that's not a business. But a lot of people kind of mix up the mechanics with the business, which needs to be creative for it to be successful. It needs to engage with people and provide a product or service that they need, right? That they really need or want. And so BROK, so they just really seemed to love this idea. And at first they say, oh, like a coach. Even beyond that, like a coach that is there with you all the time. BROK could be like a coach that is there with aspiring. So don't even sell anything, just the people that want to start businesses or have thought that they might want to do. Like, I think of my mother. She was savvy and entrepreneurial, but she was a singer, and she thought business was dumb. And math, she hated it, even though, and said she didn't understand it, even though she really did. But she just, that was her way. But she said she didn't understand it just so she didn't have to do it, because it was actually, I think, revoltingly boring for her. So, and I get that, but and that's also why I was early on. That was some of my early experimentation with AI 20 years ago, was because the boring aspects of repeating, I don't find it boring anymore. Actually, I love talking to you all. I love having these live stream SPOCK talks, and love engaging people now, because there's so much to be learned that I learn, and rather than just thinking about it and listening, and although these conversations are one-way conversations for the most part, but they can be two-way. Throw in a comment right now if you have something springing into mind. Throw in a comment, question, and I read everyone and incorporate that into future talks. So what I think the city managers really were getting was that this could amplify the economic impact more than just jobs. It could empower people, and they're going to hire some people. I'm being kind of strict about limiting the people that I hire, because the ZPE is part of the experiment that we're doing here. Now I can afford to do that because I'm backed up by teams. Okay. So a couple of people have expressed concerns. Well, is this just purely a one-man show? No, it's not. We've got lots of backup, and I have other organizations, other companies, and other resources, and everything is highly documented because it's and retained in memory by BROK and by the systems. So it's actually, we have more succession capability, which is a risk. It's one of the risks in the Ingram evaluation matrix that every business has to be aware of, and that investors look at and regulators look at. What happens to the founder, and because sometimes founders are pretty difficult to replace, despite what is taught in most MBA programs. I'm sure up until till yesterday, when Musk became the richest man in history, people were always telling him that he was replaceable, and in fact, I think that there's a little bit. I think he doesn't talk much about it, but his early experience was one of being rather pushed out, and again, not valuing his genius. Imagine somebody employed Musk at one point, or PayPal, where he was a co-founder. Imagine being that his co-founders pushing him out, or a board pushing him out, or like, I mean, it happened to Steve Jobs at Apple too, right? And what happened when Jobs was gone? Apple went tanked. You take that founder energy out, that soul, that genius out of companies now more than ever. I think for a while we were under, with the early days of the Industrial Revolution, humans started to be perceived as machines. But it's funny, now machines are being perceived as people. And so people are being perceived as people more holistically, ironically. That's how ironic is that, right? Because we're understanding, for machines to be super effective, we have to understand consciousness more, which means those of us that are working on AI and all the programmers and everyone who's not even a programmer yet, or is not a programmer at all, but wants to use AI, they're starting to think about thinking more. They're starting, and you start to realize the limits, and you start to realize how memory works. I'd like to get into some of the technical details. I think I'm going to go over a little bit today. Okay. But stick around for at least an hour, but I'm going to go, I think I've got, because we haven't done this call for, I think it's a week, right? So not quite a little less than a week, but there's a lot to cover here. So I want to talk about some of the really exciting things that are happening in the development of BROK and in the AI engineering, where we're breaking ground. So we're breaking ground. Yes. New discoveries that well-funded labs are, well, I don't know what they're finding, it would be top secret. But from what I know, we're doing things already that are definitely on the cutting edge, on the leading edge, and which are very interesting. And since I'm talking about it, I might as well just keep going. While I've been talking this last minute, I've been thinking about a couple of different streams, and one of them is this memory. And a few weeks back, I think, or maybe not that long ago, time is, we're dilating time here. We're doing a lot in a very short sprints when we focus on development, as I have been, and less talk. But the persistent memory, right, is if you dive into AI, you realize or have experience with AI, very soon you'll start to, if you're using the basics, you'll start to become frustrated by having to constantly repeat yourself. Not constantly, but if your conversation goes for more than a couple of hours, the AI will lose, most AI, even the big models, will lose the context. And so I solved that with persistent memory, or I thought I had, and I did in a way, and I knew this was a risk. And so now I've realized that there needs to be more engineering. And again, the engineering of the AI and the way memory works is going to have to mirror the human consciousness to a greater degree. And it's fortunate that my interests are broad, because my interest in consciousness, I have spent decades mapping consciousness, literally, and have hundreds of books in my library of hard copies. I've got thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of, not tens of thousands, but over 10,000 digital books, and including all the sacred literature of every major religion and obscure branches of religions and specialized enclaves of within religions, and a whole fascinating topic for me. I've been fascinated, and hence I'm curious, and hence I've amassed a massive amount of information. And then I always bring that into always balance sort of left and right, east and west, which sort of the more logical and binary and quadrivalent logic, or actually not balance. Quadrivalent logic includes binary logic, and is more consistent with the way things really are in the universe, which is quantum, or described as quantum now. So the maps of consciousness that I can see that this is going to give us a huge edge, because everyone is struggling. All scientists, there's research labs that are struggling with how to make it with this notion of persistent memory, right? And humans have known about how the structure of consciousness were. This is why the current science is where 99% of the effort is focused, and only maybe 1%. And interestingly, in Asian countries, there for more than a decade, I know, they've had monks involved, because I actually discovered that. So I invented the Buddha bot, and that was my first conversational agent 22 plus years ago. And discovered that about a decade later, there was a research going on in China where in a Tibetan, or not in Tibetan, but in a Taoist, I guess, but in a Buddhist cloister with monks, working with AI scientists on literally what they were calling a Buddha bot. This is, I hope I screenshotted that. Actually, I haven't looked for a few years to see if it's still out there. But morphogenetic field, maybe. Because that's one of the things with morphogenetic field, is that there's sometimes scientists feel like they're being surveilled, and they are, right? But maybe there's also another explanation, or concurrent explanation, which is, as scientists and researchers and philosophers are breaking new ground, their breakthroughs are affecting the morphic field, and other scientists that are working on similar things have breakthroughs in disparate places. And the reason that, but because it's observed not only in scientists and in humans, but in animals and monkeys and even supposedly inanimate objects like crystals. That sounds crazy, I know, but if you do your research, you'll find out that behavior of crystals, and even the crystallization process itself, seems to have like there seems to be some kind of morphic field as well, in how crystals form in one place, and on the other side of the planet, at the same time, a crystalline structure is created. Similar crystalline structures may be observed. This has been experimentally confirmed, on the border of heresy, though, so extremely controversial. I won't claim that this is true, but you can do your own research, and it's pretty compelling, I think, this idea, and it's consistent with science about the morphogenetic field again. So bringing this all back, the understanding of memory and how memory works. So an Odin, right? So going and how scientists are focused, 99% of AI is being led by scientists that are focusing just on the most recent. But if you look back, look at, say, Norse mythology, and Odin has the Odin myths have a clue about how ancients thought about consciousness. So Odin plucked out his right eye, gave his right eye sacrificed it for foresight, and the myth goes. And then I don't know the exact sequence, whether he always had this or what stage, but he was accompanied by these two ravens, Hugin and Munnin, memory and thought. And so those three things, plus the observer, the storyteller, of the construct, you've got these three things plus an observer. That is a really good typography, basic, but a good starting crystal to crystallize how consciousness works, and connecting to the collective unconscious and morphic resonance and all of these esoteric things. But that is how I think the persistent memory needs to be solved. And what do I mean? That is how all of that stuff that I just said. No, very simply, what we need to do is so for I'm maybe oversharing. Yeah, maybe I am. I shouldn't maybe share the secret to how this works. But I've started, so I can't leave you hanging entirely. There needs to be, and this is known, there's one extreme of forgetfulness. Now, there's sometimes if you do some experimentation with AI, it's very ungratifying, and in some cases, AI forgets your very last interaction. And all the models are better than that. They'll have context windows that go back by volume and time to have some memory and recollection, right? But the context window runs out and they forget about it. And that's kind of like our short-term memory, right? So AI has to have a short-term memory and a long-term memory. It's a very simple way of saying it. It goes deeper than that, though, which is fun for me. But that's not. But if you want simplicity, that's the simple part of it. So and well, I guess it's got to be one more. There's got to be 3 layers. There's got to be short-term memory, long-term memory, and then there's got to be the substrate, which is somewhat morphic or amorphic or collective unconscious correlations, but things that you can that are in there that you can dredge up if you pull them up, but aren't going to obliterate. Because this is what happened with BROK. This is how it's all very tied into the deep work that I'm doing on BROK. BROK it wasn't forgetting anything. It wasn't forgetting enough. And so it was getting locked into, I told it, and especially if I emphasized something, I said, remember this, it would remember it. And it does remember it. And it can create an infinite loop where it gets stuck in a loop where it can't get out of that because it's been told to remember this one thing, when in fact, I've branched out into a whole bunch of others. It needs to branch out, and there's all kinds of nuances and new things which are more important. Priorities change. The Ingram evaluation matrix, that has to be constantly evaluated as new inputs come in. Say like the feasibility, in the Ingram matrix, you've got strategic fit, feasibility, financial impact, and risk. Those are the 4 immutable categories. And a macroeconomic factor comes in, a new oil shortage, that would be example of macroeconomic factor that might affect energy prices, macroeconomic. Your availability of capital, liquid capital, those would all be internal items, and relating to financial impact. And all of these things are constantly changing, but strategic fit is less. If you're changing your strategy every minute, you're going to have a problem, right? If you're changing it every day, even that's, would be a recipe for disaster in most situations. And what I always had to do working with humans is my strategies do change, and a living strategy needs to change and be reactive and responsive. And the more knowledgeable you are and the more connected you are, the more things are going to be in flux, right? And so, but you need to have a plan and know who you are and where you're going. That's all part of your core values. Those types of things can be pretty static, and you want them to be static so that you maintain a sane trajectory that other people can understand, and not only other people, but machines. So in the past, I found that I would start with a plan, communicate it to my human team, but then I would be like, oh, and this, 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 and this. And if I went back to the team, telling them we're constantly, after I'd set the strategy, if I went back to the human team and we're constantly querying them about what about this, what about that, and hey, let's change this, let's change that, or it would be chaos, right? And I learned that I needed to kind of give myself like a dozen iterations of something and be sure that I was going to make a change before I made the change. And sometimes you miss out on opportunities like that. So the beauty is with a machine team, primarily a machine team, you can iterate at odd hours. You can iterate way more quickly, about 100 times at least. That's not, yeah, it's a 2 orders of magnitude kind of. It's not a 2x, it's like a 10x or a 100x faster rate of iterating, of changing, and AI doesn't matter. It doesn't mind if you change your mind, but it might get confused too, just like humans would. So you need to have a level of forgetfulness. So there's a reason that you don't just have all long-term memory. You need this layered hierarchy of memory. So that's the next improvement that I'm working on with BROK right now. And I won't give, without having giving away all the secret sauce for competitors that might be listening. But much easier to just do a licensing deal with us. We have, most of this is patented, and so just to give yourself stay in the guardrails and just accelerate your if you own a bank, or if you're a fintech or a neobank wannabe, then or a large enterprise, especially large enterprises, it would behoove you to utilize what I've already patented through a licensing arrangement and the ancillary services that would go along with that. So that's a pretty strong aspect to the whole neobanks business model, but our projections are not based on or dependent on that. So that's just one aspect. So so that was went down the memory lane. And so back to the event and the conversations. I think that, to summarize, the takeaway was there's a huge appetite for tools that can enable entrepreneurs or budding entrepreneurs to increase their economic output significantly, more quickly as well. It takes time to hire people and move people to Vegas. So if you could have the population of 2 million people, and it's not going to be all 2 million. So let's say 10%, 200,000 of the 2 million people decide that they want to explore ZPEs to one degree or another. You're multiplying the economic output of the city in orders of magnitude that just, you don't see. Most cities would be happy, like, measure their growth in like single digit percentages annually, right? So I said that, so there's one final point. So in summary, recognizing that I think that city managers are very intrigued, and we have I want to discuss further this concept of using ZPEs to amplify economic output for the benefit of this city, and then that becomes a model for the rest of the country and the world. And I also, Tim Scott, if you or any of your staff are listening, I think Charlotte should be. I would like to do that concurrently. Not Charlotte. Charlotte's already. I guess it could be Charlotte, but well, that's North Carolina. So that would South Carolina. In South Carolina, far more interesting, I think, would be Charleston. That would be far more interesting and unexpected. Charlotte in North Carolina is already kind of a banking center, so it shows that it can be done. You can have a banking center in the South, but Charleston was the economic center of the United States at one time. It was the precursor to New York, and so wouldn't it be great to bring that back? I love history, and I love comeback. Everybody loves a good comeback story, right? So if you're listening, this concept could be applied in that specific point. And you have limited space in Charleston, and so again, wouldn't it be great to just increase the economic output of the residents who are there, and all those that want to come in and support? And yes, real estate values might go up, but we also still have that national homeowners program to talk about, which SPOC is enabling and fueling, and which the government is very interested in. So, and that is, I think, home ownership is a key thing in American politics right now. So that we have a path to support through neobanks and SPOC and BROK. So the second part, though, is that, so that was the second part, the Vegas banking zone, and all of these ZPEs are going to need banks, and of course BROK is connected, and of course we have the Interstellar Bank SPV, which is a banking system, and it is outside of U.S. jurisdiction. So it's think of it as international, and the kind of like the concepts of offshore banking, but even beyond that, because it's structured so that accounts are essentially domiciled in space, and they're a new type of bank, and and this is being built out in 2027, and beyond. That whole that build out will take some time, but experiments will be happening much sooner than that. So that's where we see dollar plus per SPOC. The math would say you would see dollar plus SPOC at a dollar plus per token with those types of initiatives in the next 12 to the next year or so. So, but that's not investment advice. That is math, and that is there is, as that's not intended to be a forward-looking instrument. This and it's just the number of accounts and the revenue that would be generated would suggest that would be what would happen if. Okay, so with all the disclaimers that this is not investment advice, and this is digital. This is a digital asset. It's investable now. It's investment grade now, and it is it's investment grade, and it's not a security. So with that, talking about digital assets, I want to talk about the thing that moved the needle last week, which was the Stellar Note breakthrough. And that is something that I want you all to lock in to your long-term memory. What it enables to do, and because this is going to relate to all of you at some point. But what I've done, and I think I can't find anybody that's done exactly this, and it's so simple. But the Stellar Note is like, I don't want to sell SPOC. I only want to buy SPOC. And but we do need to spend money. So that's why I say spend fiat, buy and hold SPOC. Save SPOC. Save SPOC, spend fiat. Here's your quote. Spend fiat, save SPOC. And then to that end, when you've got an potentially appreciating asset, you don't want to sell that. You want to hang on to that. And so we've seen, I'll make this so simple. We've seen this with homes, right? Home equity. Everybody understands how home equity works. If you own your home outright or have very little debt on it, you can borrow against the real tangible value in your home. And every bank understands this. Every bank does this. A home equity line of credit is a wonderful thing. Borrow at a low interest rate. And why can you borrow at a low interest rate? Because the bank has good collateral, and that is, it's good collateral. It's not liquid. It's not liquid. Even then, you can borrow a substantial amount, 50, 60, 70, 75% of your home value, more, even with alternative lenders for greater risk at higher interest rates. But that's based on your real estate. And in some cases, that people that take out a home equity line of credit, they're using their primary residence. And as a lender, savvy lenders know that is like, this is why I was taught as a banker by the best lender in the world in terms of lowest default rates and best, not necessarily best returns, but the best underwriting, possibly among the best, if not the best, underwriting systems and processes and training and banker training and results in the world. At BMO, or at the Banker, and I learned all about this at the Bankers Institute of Learning. And the 5 C's of credit: character, number 1, credit, capacity, capital, and collateral. And we were taught that was the order of the 5 C's. Character is number 1, but it's too difficult to ascertain. So people basically just we're using 4, and they try to guess about something about a person's character based on their credit. And then their capacity, just, they have to have the income or means to pay. But there's actually a lot of limitations in the way that's calculated these days, with all kinds of different revenue streams that people have. Like, if you're self-employed and you're over 50 and you work irregular hours, what are you? Are you retired? No, you'll probably be self-employed. But that would be difficult for many, even if your income is high through various different sources. Banks want it to be really, really simple, and things are getting more and more complex. So it creates a dichotomy. It's a felony to lie on a credit application, but it's hard to answer a credit application accurately sometimes if you've ever done one. You've noticed, and especially I bet a lot of you crypto natives and entrepreneurs out there, it's like, in my whole life, I've rarely fit the box. So I'm sure many of you are like that. Nobody does. And everything is calibrated. Banking and everything is calibrated. Most government programs and grants even, and benefit programs are all usually kind of calibrated to normal. There is no such thing. Show me one normal person in the world anywhere. So that person's normal? Well, I bet if you do a little bit deeper dive, you're going to find some quirks, something unique about that, because everybody is as unique as their fingerprint. So the notion, but we have our whole world paradigm, the collective unconscious is being formed and framed inside in the mindset of the Industrial Revolution and assembly line manufacturing, and humans were put in assembly line education, putting out worker units rather than critical thinkers, self-sovereign individuals. So everything was calibrated around this after the Industrial Revolution, around this mindset of what a machine was, and trying to make humans be robots. Right now, we're trying to make robots. I'm repeating myself. Now we're coming full circle here. We're trying to make robots be more like humans and learning what it is to be human again. So it's so ironic. I literally just repeated that. I know. So, so you want to hang on to your assets that are going to appreciate. You want to, and that means that just like I don't want to, so I'm coming back to the Stellar notes. I don't want to sell any SPOC. I would rather borrow against it. And when you think about it, so our market cap has been, around 3 million very steadily now. And we are going to exceed that. If anything aligns, we're going to be way beyond that. If anything hits that we're talking about, I don't need all the spokes of the wheel. the Ingram Evaluation Matrix alone, the Neo Score alone, the BROK by far, it seems like, based on my latest conversations alone. And all of these things work together synergistically. So all of them working just a little bit is $1 billion proposition with easy. And any one of those spokes taking off and other ones lagging for some reason. Like the licensing, I don't even talk about that. We just take one large licensing partner for us to get to over $1 billion, which means in market cap, which means $1 per SPOC token. So whatever your SPOC is, multiply that by $1, and that's what your account would be when we hit. I should say if we hit $1. But you can see there's so many ways for us to get to that outcome. So why would you want to sell that? I don't want to. In fact, I sold my SpaceX stock because I realized that there's no way that SpaceX even that might be a good parking place for money I might think that. You need to consult you need to do your own research, but Bitcoin even, I do have Bitcoin still, and but no other cryptos really. So Solana, because SPOC is a Solana token, so Solana is flowing through, and I won't, because I know too much about SPOC and where this all is going and how far we are. And we are moving fast. It may not feel like that for crypto natives, but for the rest of the world, for anybody that's looking out on LinkedIn today, they can tell you that things don't move this fast in the real world. We are moving so quickly, with such agility that it is, and we're getting faster. We're going to get much faster. We're at still at, I say I had a burst where we were up to, we did like 12 hours of solid programming to get BROK ready and that's great because now I know for sure we're going to be ready July 24th with the public launch. But I have everything working now, except, that I want the persistent, memory is already better than most projects out there, but we can go much, much further. So anyway, that is, so with the Stellar Note, what that enables me to do is, just like you'd use a house as security for a loan, my note allows an investor to use SPOC as security, and it's liquid. So if I pay a normal investor rate, which is, actually a lower than normal rate, because it's backed by a fungible asset, almost like cash, really, because it can be converted to cash in a minute. So you could say it's cash collateral. And so for many people that can't get their head around 14,000% return, you should, but if you can't, folks on LinkedIn, how about being satisfied with, a cash collateral loan at a 10% rate, right? You need to be a sophisticated investor, and there's criteria to make sure that we stay inside the lanes and regulations. But sophisticated, excluded investors, what the requirements are, and then the investor agreement, or not the investor agreement, but the convertible note agreement, because this is technically what the Stellar Note is, just a convertible note backed by a liquid asset. So founders are very interested in this, and startups are very interested in this concept, because if they have a crypto, a project that lends itself to a utility token like ours is the core of SPOC, is the core of this whole project. But other projects, their founders could use this strategy as well, and they can reach out to me if you want to understand how. But so we will leverage the treasury, never have to spend it. We'll be able to borrow at really conservative rates. I'm comfortable Neobanx is comfortable with borrowing money from investors, and investors will be comfortable lending when there's a liquid asset underpinning all of this. So it's an incredibly powerful concept, but I'm going way over time here. So I'm going to wrap this up with an experiment. And I've talked a little about the morphogenetic field, and we're actually going to do an experiment right now. And so if you're still here, hang on for another few minutes. And we are going to try something. So I want everybody to get out your phone and go to your wallet. If you don't have a wallet, most of you listening probably do, but if you don't have a wallet, we use Soulflare or Phantom is a popular one. And those are the two main wallets. It has to be a Solana-based wallet. So you can't buy. We've applied to Coinbase, but you can't buy SPOCK on Coinbase yet. Normally, it'd be a long shot for a project our size to get on Coinbase, but we have a special path because of the utility of our token, and because we're aligned with the X402 and merchant-to-merchant commerce, and SPOCK is built for merchant-to-merchant, machine-to-machine commerce, and the whole agentic economy and an agentic banking system. And especially if we get the growth happening, I applied when our growth had been accelerating really quickly. So as we return to that, which I think could happen right now, that we will get special attention from Coinbase. So I'd rather do that than spend my time applying to all the other smaller. But we're already on Jupiter, we're on SolScan, we're on CoinGecko, which is a big one, and had to go through the formal application process and we're accepted there. But anyway, so get your wallet handy. So I'm going to go to my dev wallet. I'm going to do this with you right now. So get your let's see where we're at right now with the Genius SPOCK, the Genius token. So we're at around 2.8 million, just under 3 million market cap right now. So what I want you to do is I want everyone to buy a little bit of SPOCK in a specific way, okay? I want you to buy so that I know how many people are participating, an amount of SPOCK that starts with a 5. So that could be, 500 SPOCK tokens. That'd be, let's say 5,000. So around 5,000 SPOCK would be around $15, I think would give you 5,000 and something SPOCK. So start about any amount, a larger amount if you want. But here's the thing: only put in an amount that you are going to leave there. Okay. And this is and for a moment, I want you to think outside of yourself and think about the community. And this is investment activism in action. Okay. This is not investment advice. This is literally investment activism. So just on the basis of wanting to move the needle in the morphic field, you're going to get all the personal benefit too from this, by the way. But of course, it's your money in your wallet, right? But I want you to this amount that you put in. So don't put in 50,000 if that's too much for you, and you're going to have to liquidate some of that right away. Okay, put in right now just an amount that you've decided that you are going to leave there, sort of earmark it. This amount that I bought today in June 12th, that you're going to leave it there. Okay. June 13th. Okay. So we're going to do this. I'm going to do this right now. So I am going to okay, so I am going to do $15.29, which comes out to 5,327 SPOC, the Genius token. Okay, so that's 0.225 SOL. So I am going to buy that right now. Of course, I'm not selling. I haven't sold any SPOC yet, but I want all of you that are doing this, that are participating in this right now, and maybe give me a thumbs up or something. That'd be another nice way to know that everyone who participated, and let's see what this does. So I'm going to do it right now. Boom. Swapping, done. Okay, so I just did a small token amount, but it's not the amount that matters. It's the mindset that this is an amount. This is an amount that I'm committing to this vision of global banking, interstellar bank, self-sovereignty, freedom, all the things that that attracted you to this project, all the things that you're trying to achieve in your life. Right now, I want you to. That's what we're doing here. Okay, this is a live exercise in morphic resonance in the morphogenetic field. So, final word, and wow, we've already. I literally only put in 5,000, and we just saw a little bump, and that's that's great. Of course, we're going to see a bump, right? But we've got over 100 people, I'm sure, that are watching. And if you're watching this after as well, so if you're not watching this right now, if you read this after or listen to this after, and maybe I'll do a clip of this at the end, so people don't have to watch the whole thing, because we're up to an hour and a half. But all the buildup was important. It's talking about consciousness and the morphogenic field and the collective unconscious and all these things. And so back to Rupert Sheldrake, and like how when one person thinks things and then other people think things, that's what we're doing here. It's not just about the money, it's and the math behind it. Of course, if everyone puts in a little bit, we're going to see a bunch of trades, and it's going to move the needle a little bit. And if we've all just decided that I'm going to hold, I would encourage you, I'm going to hold all. And here's the other thing too. So you're going to say, well, what if I hold all of my SPOC and don't sell? If you do one bit of homework, watch the GameStop story movie. It's called Dumb Money. And look at how an idea, once it starts to propagate, can beat Wall Street. And we've got more than enough people here to propagate this concept and to get engagement through investor activism to change the world and to expand self-sovereignty, to expand freedom. And and down the road, so right now, I've created this stellar note for where we can leverage the treasury, where neobanks can get all the funding, more funding capital than it will even need, but it's always good to have dry powder, as they say, so for acquisitions, and there's always uses for capital and for buybacks. Just that creates the flywheel that we buy back more and more SPOC, and that's what the neobanks treasury will. A portion of all revenue will go into buying more SPOC. So all of this compounds and accelerates and it's a limited pot. It's the supply of SPOC is limited, just like Bitcoin. So more can't be issued. So that increases is designed to increase value. Anyway, so that's the hope everyone if you join in later, join in today, make sure you press that button and bought an amount starting with 5 of SPOCK tokens. Everybody, I just did it myself, and we will have the next SPOCK talk on Thursday, and Thursday at 6 p.m. and then again on Saturday at 8. And I have all kinds of meetings lined up, all kinds of, so I could keep going on, but we're at an hour and 30 minutes. So I will say, live long and prosper. Get the whole thing there. Live long and prosper, everyone.